Here to react to the Republican convention and so much more, the great Tammy Bruce joins us now. She's a columnist for AMAC.us, a Fox News contributor. Tammy, always nice to talk to you.
Well, yes, what a time to be alive. You know, it is a remarkable thing to be watching.
Amazing, amazing. And, you know, let me just start with the assassination attempt on President Trump this past week.
Yeah.
And then for him to carry on the convention as scheduled, and then to put together the event that went over multiple nights, but I just thought every single one of them upped the ante on the last. What did you think of the convention and all of this?
Well, you know, it hasn't even been a week. Tomorrow will be a week.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about the speed with which things have happened, but also, you know, for me, when I think about the assassination attempt, I only can think about it in like little bit bites, because part of that is having to contemplate what would have happened had it been successful. Now, we know that Corey, our firefighter, was in that line of fire, sitting between the shooter and the president, and he suffered the ultimate consequence of that. And we have to realize, and there's just so many other things that it's going on. It's like we can take one element at a time. But we knew that it was, in a sense, inevitable because of the nature of the rhetoric and the panic that we saw developing from the Democrats. But there's a part of me that has always said, well, they won't go that far. They'll put him in jail for sure, right? It was like that was going to be the big deal.
Yes.
And when things started to turn his way, when the Supreme Court came out with their decision about immunity, when his polls clearly continued to rise no matter what had occurred, when he was able to keep his building after being able to get the bond approved, the hoops this man had to jump through, right. He did every single one. But as the tide started to turn against their little scheme, against their witch hunt, I thought to myself and mentioned to a few people, well, I don't think they're going to be able to put him in jail. They wanted to. And then there's just silence in the room because of what the next obvious thing would be. And I think it reminded all of us of the nature of many of the people in the establishment, and not that they were sitting under some looming portrait of Stalin trying to figure out an assassination, but the rhetoric that they were using would point only to one thing. And that partly, I think is what has been discussed a little bit, but it is the day after the debate, Vince, is when Biden put out a tweet that repeatedly asserted that Trump was a literal threat to life as we know it. That was the day after the debate. And 15 days later is when all this happened. And it's like, there's, just like with Kavanaugh, the situation with Justice Kavanaugh, the rhetoric that was just overwhelming all the time, right. Painting that guy as a drug-dealing gang rapist. It was insane. Of course, and it's not even about politics. It's that kind of rhetoric is bound to tip over anybody who is mentally unstable.
Yes.
With the excuse to act. So I don't care about the scumbag that did this. We need to know more. But ultimately, it's not that, it was a Democrat or, it was, a libertarian, whatever. That's not the point. The point is the rhetoric is meant to tip over anybody who wants to grab onto that ring and say, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And this is that after 10 years, Vince, of dehumanizing rhetoric, right? The Russia hoax, which was frightening to people, all of the other things that they said he was, it's astounding to me it took this long. And all we can do is, no matter, I believe in God. I don't like organized religion very much. But when I say thank God, I mean it. I mean that. And there's just a divine providence that we can look at, ranging from George Washington never having been shot through the entire war when he was leading the troops, and he, talked about feeling and hearing bullets whizzing by him,
Yeah.
To other just remarkable events that have allowed this country to continue to survive and thrive. So I'm still overwhelmed. I thank God for the convention, which was so well produced. It tells you about the focus of the people running the party and the nature of what a Trump party and organization looks like. The family was all there. I'm sure Mrs. Trump did not want Barron in the environment, I'm guessing, because of what had happened. But he was the only one missing, and her presence was magnetic. Her appearance, her surprising him on the stage at the end was charming.
Yes.
It was magnificent. So I say we hold on to this roller coaster because now someone's in charge of taking us to the right place, I think.
So my impression of this convention was that it was the most, first of all, it was the best Republican convention I've ever seen. It was also the most Trump-like. That the kind of the vestiges of the establishment Republican Party that had permeated certainly the 2016 convention. 2020 was really thrown into chaos because that was basically held on the South Lawn of the White House. But this one was a Trump convention, and I think it best reflected the will of the voters. It actually spoke to their concerns, like even up to and including the selection of J.D. Vance and his great speech earlier this week.
Yes.
I felt like this was a convention that actually gave a crap about the people.
Well, and what's funny is what the complaint from the Biden campaign was, they didn't even talk about their position on the issues because they can't defend their position on the issues. It's like caring about the people of the United States is at the heart and soul of every single freaking issue. The American people know what the issues are. They're not sitting there drooling and waiting for their pablum to be told what matters. And we've seen since the beginning of Biden's term, the main concerns as things started to unravel, the economy, immigration, and crime. And I mean, come on. And so clearly when you think about J.D. Vance, Eric Trump's speech, the nature of, why Trump, and he talked about some of the issues, the nature of assassination attempt, the issue of corruption in the government. All of those things are intertwined, and yet the Democrats literally couldn't see what the outreach was and what the point was. And doesn't that tell you everything?
Let me. I want to bring up your book here, and I didn't mention it in the intro, but I want to mention it now. Your book is new book called "Fear Itself: Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda," and I think it's so timely because, as I understand it, and I'm going to read this book. I look forward to it. As I understand it, you write about kind of how the left really tries to force us all into compliance with their will by scaring the hell out of us and telling us that they're the only answer. They're the only answer to that fear that they've been preaching, and that's found through what we just saw. You just laid it out nicely that they spread all this fear about Trump, and of course the logical end game of that is that somebody who's unbalanced is going to take a shot at him, which he did. And
that's right.
And we saw it in COVID. We even see it, I think, with the Secret Service right now. It's like let's just assume for a moment that what we saw this past weekend was just gross incompetence. What that means is that the Secret Service, as controlled by the left right now, is merely just security theater. They're not actually good at their jobs. In fact, they're horrifically bad at their jobs. But the left tells us, just trust us. We'll take it from here.
Well, it's the ultimate defunding of the police. They've done it to everyone. And yes, the book is a call for people to realize, and I lay it out how this is the case, that none of what we are facing is natural or organic. And again, COVID, perfect example, but certainly it was way pre-COVID. It's the worldwide left that does this. But it's even a bad economy because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. You don't know if you will pay your rent next month. You don't know if you can get to work. You don't know what protein, and you have to balance out between getting to work and having chicken for dinner, or if you'll ever have eggs again at $10 a dozen. That provokes a kind of fear of an instability that you just can't rely on anything. The defunding of the police, the rise in crime, the chaos at the border, all of it is meant, and this is the main impact of fear, besides provoking violence against your political opposition, is that if things are too dangerous to engage in, like go to a school board meeting or speaking your mind or misgendering someone, the idiotic rules that we face, the changing of language, if it's too dangerous to speak because of punishments, you stop thinking about the issues and you stop attending political events, and you don't have the money to attend political events. You retreat from public life, from commentary, from involvement, and that is what's best for the left, which provides and offers nothing but chaos. And the only way to maintain that power is to keep people too afraid,
yes,
to retreat into mass anxiety, the nature of then thinking you've got to turn to big government because there's no one else you can rely on. It's all a lie. And, I think, and I lay that out. It's an ancient technique. I lay that out. We certainly go into the nature of the issues. Climate change, perfect example of that, amorphous boogeyman
yes,
that we should all be afraid of. And then the ultimate is that we are the problem. Our breathing is the problem. Our eating is the problem. And ultimately, it really is kind of domestic violence writ large, because it's exactly what batterers do to their targets, to their victims, destroying self-esteem, blaming that person, convincing that person they're the problem, that there are punishments if you don't behave. And yet, you begin to believe it. That's the other issue. So at this time, I knew it would be relevant always. It's an enduring issue. But my God, we are seeing culmination. And now we're at a point where, and I talk at the end about breaking the spell. You saw during the assassination, tens of thousands of people who did not stampede when multiple gunshots rang out. And I get the chills thinking of this, because they saw the courage in their leader. And that is, that's catching, you can catch that from someone they waited. And Trump mentioned this when he got up from the ground. He saw that no one was running away. And that's when he knew he had to speak and encourage them. And his fight was about not giving up. It could have been his last words heard in public. It was about encouraging everyone to not give up. And then you got the USA chant,
yes,
but nobody fled. And that is what we're talking about. The left encourages people to be afraid and romanticizes their victimhood, tells them there's no hope. So we will help you get reparations or
yes,
looting and Trump's message last night, as he said directly, I want you to be excited about the future.
yeah.
And what a difference, Vince, in worldview. It's magnificent.
Well, the left represents chaos and the right represents order, insofar as you can distill it down. And of course, it gets messy when people on the right betray that order and join in on the chaos. But, for President Trump to stand up and to be resilient and to be brave, it calmed that crowd, as you point out. And Tucker Carlson had an opportunity to speak last night, and he said at the convention that it was at that moment, because of the courage you're talking about, Tammy Bruce, that Donald Trump became the leader of this nation, he said. And right. Boy, do I feel that.
And that is the kind of thing, while in my book I talk about personal things that people can do involving courage, it is courage that is required to confront, these lies and these false, evil, scenarios. And that is when we see it demonstrated, it is a magnificent inspiration. And I think that, we've got to look at that. And of course, the Democrats and the left will double down on the fear mongering and on the threats. And Trump, now we know the security is going to be completely different. And it should be for his entire family and for the Vances. But I think that, we've got a chance here. And for people who are still a little confused about what's been happening, a lot of people from the assassination attempt to the convention. The doors are being unlocked by people who've been trapped by the Democrats, who are Democrats or independents, believing the lies. And I would hope, like my book tells them, that they're not crazy. None of this was normal or natural.
No.
And there is a way to escape. I escaped it. Others escaped. And I think now is, if it's ever a time, Vince, now is the time for us to get this country back in shape.
The book is called Fear Itself, Exposing the Left's Mind-Killing Agenda. Its great author is Tammy Bruce, New York Times bestselling author. Tammy, thank you as always for joining us. Congratulations on the new book. May it also become another bestseller. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good to talk to you. Of course.